Same old trouble, villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome once again to Graphically Novel. My name is Josh Wasta, a.k.a. Fallout Fury, and with me, are you ready?
Yeah, this is only two left.
You keep stealing yourself.
I know. This is two left. Okay, hit me.
My platonic Nikki.
Ew. Ew.
The man who I try to picture me without him, but I can't. Because we could be immortals.
Oh, no. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. Penultimate episode. Fallout Boy reference.
Oh, God, I just feel dirty.
It's Bear.
Bear, I'm sorry to interrupt your introduction, but could you please give me a glass of wine? I need it now.
Yes, ma'am.
And while you're pouring.
And while I'm pouring a glass of wine for the lovely and talented Baronessa, Miss Jennifer Howland. I had a better intro, but I got sidetracked.
Sorry.
By
I'm sorry.
platonic Nikki over here.
Platonic Nikki.
Oh, Nikki!
Okay, stop. And it's my pleasure to introduce a returning guest.
Two-time guest.
Woohoo! Alysen, and I always screw up your last name, so please.
Oh, Casaccio.
Casaccio.
Everyone.
I'm so glad that I didn't attempt, and therefore absolutely, positively mangle it.
It's a name you gotta say with your fingers bunched in front of your face.
Fair enough. Yeah, basically.
Anyway, Alysen, thank you for joining us in madness once more.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Well, and, this season we decided who we were going to invite for each episode instead of what we normally do, which is just kind of throw it out to the masses and see, which you had done for our Tank Girl episode.
Yeah.
And, because you were like, oh my God, gimme. But when it came to the old guard, especially Charlize Theron kicking some major ass, we knew we had to get you back again.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Get you on the old guard episode. So thank you.
Nice. Yeah, thank you.
So we've done your history of comic books, so we'll flip straight to what we're talking about, which is the Old Guard graphic novel, the same name. But we haven't done this in a while, and I want to highlight the person that wrote it, because Greg Rucka, we've talked about him before, specifically when we talked about Wonder. Greg Rucka is huge in DC. He's just done a ton of stuff for them. He started Gotham Central, which is hopefully going to be a TV series starting soon, which basically was what Gotham is, except it's just about the Gotham PD. He did a long stint on Wonder Woman. He invented Kate Kane Batwoman. What we now see as Batwoman that was in the first season of the show, that's for him. And then he's had some independent comics, of which The Old Guard is one, that he ended up doing under the Image label, but he created it. There's another one called Lazarus that I keep hearing about, that's gotten a lot of great press that he's done. And he also did another called Stumptown, which was unfortunately just a one-season show on NBC. Yeah, which might be a stay tuned. We'll see. I watched the first episode of it, and it was okay.
It was better than Swamp Thing.
Was better than Swamp Thing.
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
But yeah, and then he wrote Old Guard in 2017, which was going to be a one and done, but became so popular, got picked up by Netflix. Charlize Theron was a producer on it, loved this comic. So it became so popular that he actually wrote a second volume in early 2019. So fingers crossed. I mean, there's more out there now. There might be even more if he decides to go with it. So
and hopefully will be the basis for the sequel movie that's coming up too.
Yep. And another movie was greenlit.
Yeah.
Alysen, what were your thoughts? Well, first of all, here's a big question for this movie. Did you watch it knowing nothing? Did you go into it knowing absolutely nothing about it?
Yes. 100%.
And what did you think?
So I watched it a few times because I wanted to watch it before getting any kind of exposure to the comic. Then I watched it after exposure to the comic, and then I watched it once while reading the comic. Because I kind of wanted to follow along and see where the changes were and things like that. So my first reaction, the first watch through was, oh, wow, this is really cool. This is a really interesting thing to do with immortals. It felt a little like Hunger, if you've seen that movie, right? Like your immortality goes away, but you don't really know why. You think it probably has to do with age.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I thought it was fascinating. I thought it had some really cool things. It's hard to come up with a premise about immortality that we haven't basically mediated to death.
Right. No, I hear you. Yeah, the only one that I've, in fact, a role-playing game that I'm doing recently, which is kind of like a friend of mine is running kind of like a Sky High kind of thing. So everybody's high schoolers, but I made the immortal. But my idea is that he was in the 1880s, did a spell that he thought, or she actually thought failed until 40 years later when she died. And then she was just reincarnated, but like Alia style from Dune, where he just had all of the memories from birth of the previous life. But it also means you got to go through the beginning levels again every time. So death has consequences because you do have to go through the first, little bit of life, and it keeps getting longer. Like, for some reason, people don't just let you be an adult at 13 anymore. They now make you wait until 18, and it takes forever. So like good. that is my big kind of immortal. This is a new book, but it's hard to do that, in a show or in a TV series or in a movie. I mean, movie would probably be the easiest because you just keep flashing back, but then you have that time where you're like 5 and you try to explain to your mom that you have all these memories and whatever, and it's in the 1920s, so they drown you or whatever, because you're possessed by demons.
Or they start hitting you with electroshock therapy until your brain's completely scrambled.
Right.
And they did fewer. It's funny you mentioned flashbacks, because I think the movie version of this did fewer flashbacks than the comic does.
Mm-hmm.
That absolutely. Yes, it does.
I really loved the flashbacks in the comic. Right, there were some really choice ones that I'm really surprised I didn't use.
Yeah, well, in the movie, and it's fresh in my mind because I just watched it this morning. Again, with the comic, same as you did to kind of figure. Instead of in the comic where they have that availability to just do the flashback and have wonderful art from these different time periods, they just tell the story.
Right.
So it's just a scene, still dramatic, but it lacks that additional punch.
Yeah.
So,
and
Jen,
the one,
go ahead.
I was gonna say the one I think of the most is books. Is this idea that it's the way that it's described in the comic, where he is basically being driven across a Russian winter because the Russians hate him so much they're willing to burn down their own towns along the way, right? So then Napoleon's army is just screwed, and he hasn't eaten in weeks, so he decides he's gonna run. They catch him, they hang him, and he figures out, I'm not gonna die. So he hangs there for 3 days waiting for the army to move on, and then the crows come and he gets his first good meal, right? Like, like that's so evocative. And, but they did other things in the movie that weren't in the comics that I think made it more of an action flick, and that's okay.
Right. And actually this will bring it up. I'm going to lift our normal spoilers for the comic because they're just I should totally be careful about that. That's a good point. No, it's okay. We're going to lift it because they're so similar.
Yeah.
They really are, with the exception that, like we've talked about, there are, and I have kind of beats. All of the beats are the same, with the exception of Niall's role at the end and Copley. Copley's a little different, but as far as the beats and as far as how the story is going, pretty much the same. And Greg Rucka wrote the script, so he basically took his own thing that he wrote and then made the screenplay out of it. But Jen, on purpose, I had been spoiled as to what the Old Guard was. Mm-hmm. But when we watched it, I just, one night when we're sitting down and you give me the remote, I just turned it on.
Right.
And you were like, what's this? I'm like, it's called the Old Guard. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. And you're like, okay. And then Charlize Theron comes on and you're like, oh, okay.
Right. And then she's killed in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
In the first scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you see. Yeah. So, what was your first impressions? What did you think?
Well, as Josh indicated, I really love action movies. I love action movies. I love action movies with a female main character, especially when they let that female main character be a badass, you know,
just like Atomic Blonde.
Yeah, I mean,
again,
just
Charlize Theron,
like
so
not
amazing.
not taking anything, but also just having that ease of leadership. That's something that I really noticed that she was able to bring forward in Old Guard. It was there in Atomic Blonde, but in Old Guard, it was just like she walked into a room and you knew she was the boss without anyone saying she was the boss.
She gave me a lot of the same vibes. We've been watching the Resident Evil movies, but the Mila Jovovich, as she keeps going on in that series, like the series keeps getting more ridiculous. Like the movies keep getting more ridiculous.
It's terrible.
But that character gets better.
Yes.
You know, and that's why you're watching it. And to the point where by the third movie, she just walks in the room and everybody's like, who is that? Anybody that doesn't know her is like, who is that? And everybody else is like, that's the person you're deferring to for the rest of the time we're around here.
Right.
Like, she's who gets us out alive.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first impression for the movie was I liked it. I also liked that while it was a little heavier in primary characters of men, there was a reason for that, and that's part of the plot, you know, because the woman that Charlize Theron had been with for so long had been, you know, vanquished to the bottom of the sea, and then they bring in Niall, and you know, I just really liked the idea. Also, it was interesting to me, these men have been around for millennia, right?
Yes.
Or whatever, however long, for a long time. But they still deferred to Niall. Once she got her feet under her, even before she was sure of herself, they were like, okay, you're it. You're a leader. You're here. And I really thought that there was an amazing amount of egalitarianism in that group, even though there was a de facto leader.
It's a military rank.
Yeah.
They deferred to her just because of her.
Yeah, she's got modern military experience in a leadership role, right? We don't know what role the I call them the boys, right? We don't know what role the couples were.
Yeah.
And we know just enough about Book to know that, I mean, he wasn't a general, because generals don't go AWOL, right?
Right.
Okay. And the other thing that we know is that Andy's a Scythian. And that was huge for me, just knowing a little bit about the Scythian civilization. That's like saying I'm a Spartan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there is that natural deferment. I think it's rank.
Yeah. It's absolutely training and rank, and not only that, but they are the immortals as they are before Niall joins them. They understand the modern world, like to the point that they can identify, like if a camera is transmitting off, off through the internet and things. But they almost seem to be like, okay, you have been steeped in this world more. Like, not only do we have this, but we also have like remembering the last however many 3,000 years worth of shit. You are focused on the here and now. Right. So a lot of those things where it's more of it's for the movie, it's why Andy doesn't check the gun that Book gives her, but it's why Niall does.
Right.
Niall is looking at these weapons and just really instinctively checks the weapon. The same as Andy looks over the axe. It's just hardwired into them, and it's a very, very subtle thing. And I know that some people like that I've seen argue about, well, there's no way that Book could have given her that gun and she wouldn't have checked it or whatever. I'm like,
I don't know.
No, because she trusts her teammate, because again, he's younger. So guns and firearms and those kind of things, I'm sure, are his job. And that's why he gives it to her, and why he also knows that she won't, check it.
And in the comic, I think they really drive home the message that Andy is a little bit technologically backward. She can't operate her cell phone.
Right.
And in fact, what reveals the betrayal is not the pistol, but is the internet, right? That Niall's like, hey, we're in a cave. right? So
Right.
where are you getting Wi-Fi?
Right.
So I think that could have shined a little bit brighter in the movie, but I think you're right. I think they were going for something a little more subtle.
Yeah. Bear, your first experience with this movie?
Was actually, I think it was when we made the list and we were like, we're gonna do the Old Guard. And I'm like, I've seen previews for that on Netflix.
I told you, do not read anything.
And I didn't.
Go home and turn it on.
No, I didn't. I went home immediately and watched it after we put together the list for the season. And I absolutely loved it because, again, Charlize Theron. The pharmaceutical guy, I just had his name pulled up. Harry Melling is
the
one
guy
of
that
those.
played Merrick?
Yeah, one of those
Merrick.
guys that I love to hate.
He's a
Yeah.
Weasley little fucker.
Yeah.
Exactly. You just look at him, you're just like, I don't know that I could like you if I met you in person, just because all of the characters that you've played are just assholes.
It's
Right.
kind of like how the actor of Joffrey from Game of Thrones stopped acting for a while because people would just meet him and hate him.
Right?
And slap him.
Yeah.
It's like, I just want to walk up to you and slap you.
All these people of shorter stature just coming up and slapping me all the time. I don't understand.
But no, seriously, I did the same thing though, as I watched it, I read it, and then I watched it with the comic in hand, and mainly just to see, how much the imagery matched up, which is quite a bit. I had to post the scene that you have now soiled by your intro.
Oh.
The scene in the back of the transport where they're laughing at him.
Oh my God, what is that?
boyfriend?"
Your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes on his rant about how much he loves this man, and then they finally get stopped and they open up the door and everybody in there is dead except for those two, and they're still handcuffed.
Right. And they're like, I don't suppose any of you would have a key. Well, and in the movie, they're like, I don't suppose any of you would have a key. In the comic, they're like, who would have thought that amongst all these dudes, nobody would have a key? Yeah. There are so many, both in the movie and in the comic. They do a very good job of balancing both. And actually, one of the notes that I have here is we've discussed, especially with The Crow, that if you watch The Crow, the movie, and you read The Crow, the comic book, it's like you need both of them to have the full experience of what The Crow is. I think that that's very similar here because you get those flashbacks. You don't just get Booker's 200 years old. He's kind of the baby of the group. You get Booker was in Napoleon's army and what he had to go through, and you don't just get Andy had a mentor and the mentor died. No, you get what she was through with that mentor up until the point that he died. You actually get Andy trying to have a relationship and trying to love that. Which was a fantastic part of that.
And I think that's another story that hasn't been told in Immortality. The story we see in Immortality most commonly is this person stays young forever, so they have 1,000, fresh young things around them forever. But in reality, is that what any human would actually want? You want someone you can relate to.
Right.
And if that someone is 80 years old, then so be it.
Right. Well, but on the other side, the plane scene was added in the movie where Andy and Niall are going instead, in the comic, it's literally Niall's like, no, you're not gonna, bam. And Andy just shoots her in the head and is like, okay, well, it's gonna take you a while to to wake up again. And then is transporting her. She wakes up again in the desert. She's like, hey, you just bam. Just shoots her again. It's like, we'll be in Paris soon. And then,
Yeah.
Whereas the plane
the first
scene,
few were the hardest ones. Remember that line popping up in
Yes.
there.
Yeah. Whereas I really enjoyed the plane scene because it gives you that understanding of Niall and also gives you a lot of the I do not give a fuck of Andy.
But it also
Absolutely.
gives you that moment, that connection between Niall and Andy that happens that you are like, okay, whatever. They're not going to form a bond. And then it's there.
Right. Well, and it's when she fakes out
Right.
with the
Do you
pilot.
think you speak Russian?
Yeah. do you speak Russian? No,
No,
so
I can tell you don't speak Russian. Why is that? Because I told the pilot to play dead.
Yeah.
And but it's again, it's light, it's fun, and they don't have that part later in the comic toward the end in the while they're escaping. They just have this whole series where they're like, bitch. Like they're calling each other's names, and then both of them settle on bitch at the same time to call each other, and then they break into a room. Like they didn't have that in the movie, but they did have that kind of on the plane where they needed to sort their shit out, and they needed things to be settled. Like they needed to know who the alpha was,
right? Well, they needed to be operating from the same point of reference,
right?
And that the plane scene is what did it in the movie, and the breakout scene is what did it in the comic.
Right. And I think the airplane scene too does a secondary thing, which is we've already started to see that Andy has she's so tired of living.
Yeah.
That Andy is exhausted, and they define it a little more elegantly later, but that Niall is so new and so fresh that she still believes in God. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so, that dichotomy too between them, I think is really fascinating.
I agree. But the other part of that is that Andy is tired of life, and Andy is ready to be done, but she still has a value for life. She knows that Niall doesn't know that she has value for life. Right. Yes. And that's why, like, when she acts like she kills the pilot, like, the first time I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay on board with this person. Like, you didn't tell me that the pilot was a bad dude. Like, you didn't tell me anything about the pilot. She just killed a random dude. And then it was basically like, no, I just told him to play dead, and the pilot's in on it the whole time. I'm like, okay, now I'm down. I am down because you have shown, I'm going to tie this into fucking anti-maskers, I swear to God. You understand that you don't have that value for yourself, and if you were to die, it would be okay. Yeah. But you do care about people around you.
Yeah. Right.
And ultimately in the movie, that's the other thing that I liked, the addition, was showing what she had done throughout the years and the good repercussions.
Oh, it's lovely.
Later.
Yeah.
Like, that people would grow up to have vaccines, and people would grow up 3 generations later because that person lived. This happened. Like, that was fantastic.
I loved the concept that they wrote in for that piece of it, and I loved the story of it. And my only criticism is that last wrap up in the movie made it feel like a pilot. It made it feel like a TV pilot. Yeah. Like, now here we are, Charlie's Angels or A-Team or whatever. Yeah. And this is going to be like how it goes. That was my only criticism of it, though. And it's far outweighed by everything else I loved by it.
Yeah. I agree. I think you could probably turn off the scene where they tell Booker 100 years. Like it ends in the comic. That's exactly where it ends in the comic.
Yes.
And then the 2 scenes after it, both the one with Copley and the one with Booker, where Quinn shows up. Both of those, you could probably just stop after the beach scene.
Agreed.
And, you're good. Is it the worst thing, though, to have, if you have to have that built in, we want another one?
Yeah.
At least they didn't put it in an important part of anything, like you can turn it off and be like, okay, I know, we're done. I don't think it detracts from it.
I think it's because it's Netflix. That's what I'm tripped up on, because I feel like, Netflix, you want to do another second? Sure you do. Give me Bright 2. If Bright 2 happened, like, my faith in their ability to actually follow through is maybe lower than it should be.
Okay, well, Bright 2 was greenlit right away, but had problems with the writer. The writer did things that...
Josh, it may not be their fault. It's still their problem.
So I'm looking through my notes.
I'd like to touch back on something that Alysen, you brought up about the comparison to the hunger. Like, the immortality is not really immortality. And the thing that I love about this is that it fucks with physics, but it keeps with physics. It's a law of thermodynamics. Eventually, matter will...
Yeah, eventually everything's got to break down.
Right. What is it? Let me see here.
Especially when Vin Diesel travels through the air.
Stop it. This is a different type of physics, darling. The second law of thermodynamics says that entropy always increases with time.
Yeah.
So I liked that they didn't know when it was going to happen for them, but they knew that the older immortals within them were the ones that eventually did die. And I just really liked that, you know, it's just like everything else. You don't know when it's going to happen, but it is definitely going to happen.
It is going to happen. It's just not going to happen, you know, in 75 years or 80 years like most people.
Right.
It's, you know, 7,500 years.
Right.
And it means that for that team, they are still putting their necks on the line when they are going in and they're doing this stuff, right? When they're selecting a job, they're still at risk.
Right.
And I think if there were zero risk for them, it would be much more two-dimensional and just less interesting.
Agreed. So
It'd be much more Highlander.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing that I like about that is the concept that they have to be, you know how they talked about it had been so long since there had been another.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that the energy of the group needs to be focused on finding more others. Yeah. You know, that needs to be the primary focus. All of the stuff that they do is done within
They've also said in both the movie and the comic that they all know when another one
They have
happens,
the dreams
because they all have the dreams.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those, did Andy just lose her immortality and then they all started having dreams because that energy went out
that's what I'm wondering.
Universe?
That's what I think.
Do the dreams does the introduction of a new immortal presage the end of an existing one?
The end of existing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's only if we really want to fall down a nerdy rabbit hole, I think there's only enough, immortal energy in whatever given pool for a certain number of them.
Right. And do you think that there's, obviously with the team that we see in the movie and this, they're all military.
All of them are.
They all come from the military. So, we're talking about, Colby? Is that the? Copley. So we're talking about this person that's tracking them. Do we now focus only, when we're trying to maybe predict where the next new one is going to come, we focus on military?
Yeah. Because I think they are supernatural warriors.
Right.
Yeah.
Was Andy's lover,
Quinn?
whose name I can't remember,
Achilles.
Quinn?
Oh.
Andy's.
Yeah.
Are you talking about her mentor or her lover?
Her lover.
Achilles was his name. The slave?
No, the woman.
No, that
wasn't
they weren't
a lover.
lovers. They were just.
Oh, okay.
Quinn. You're talking about Quinn.
Yeah.
Quinn.
Yeah, Quinn only existed in the movie. And I noticed that she fought from horseback.
Yeah.
Which is
that's right. Okay,
the
now
fact
I remember
she
that
fought
scene because she was Mongol, wasn't she?
Mongol.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's the assumption I think we're supposed to make because she is played by an Asian actress and fought from horseback.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to remember. That was the scene I was trying to remember, as I couldn't remember if she was that was the only one out of all of them that I thought maybe would not have been military. But now that you bring up that scene, I completely remember.
Well, and what defines military? Gangs can be military.
Sure.
Terrorist cells.
I think that's why.
Military.
Yeah, I think that's why I use the term warrior because a Scythian. You're not really in the military. You just are Scythian.
You're just a Scythian.
Right. Yeah. Well, and knowing nothing about the second book, but knowing that Greg Rucka was writing the second book at the same time he was writing the screenplay for the movie.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that.
I'm wondering if the second one will be the Quinn storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is cool. It brings me coming back. It puts that tie in. But it just didn't do that in the comic. We mentioned Copley, and I want to talk about him because I'm trying to remember Harry Melling is Merrick, is the actor that you were talking about, where you're like, I just want to punch him in the face all the time. Chiwetel Ejiofor, which I probably butchered that name.
Ejiofor.
Yeah, he was the operative in Serenity.
Absolutely.
Serenity.
He was also in Kinky Boots. He's a phenomenal actor, but in this movie, he is very much the operative from, Serenity, if that conditioning could be broken by the end. Because he very much has the ends justify the means throughout the movie, and then has kind of a reckoning with that.
I just destroyed something in the process of, something that we can't bring back.
Right. And I have been thinking about if I like the comic Copley or the movie Copley more. And, like you were saying, Alysen, by the end, it's like he's kind of Charlie's Angels, like kind of doing he's the Charlie. In the comic, he like calls Merrick and is like, I quit. I'm out. And he's like, you can't quit. I'll kill you. And he's like, yeah, you'll be dead way before that happens. And like, there's an explosion in the background where Merrick's at. And he's like, well, that's her. Gotta go now. Bye now. And like, he's on a plane to like GTFO.
Yep. So it's funny. I like Copley in the movie better. I like Merrick in the comic better. And
Merrick in the comic is just a villain, though. Like
love him.
Yeah.
He's got neck tattoos. He's not showing up at a pharmaceutical industry conference to sell some garbage.
He's an evil Tony Stark.
It's it's just one of the fingers he has across multiple pies.
Right. So like his first scene in the comic is a lot like his second scene, because you see him, at the pharmaceutical conference and whatever. But his scene where he meets the Immortals, where he meets Nikki and Joe, basically there's no pretense. He's like, I am a villain. Yep. I get what I get through very nefarious means. I have no problems with ethics, and so I'm going to cut you up a lot. And in the movie, it takes him a while to get to that point where finally he's like, I will slice you piece by piece for centuries.
Because I feel like in the movie, he's not that same level of gangster. In the movie, I get what I want because my daddy gave it to me. And I kind of understand what I'm getting into, but not really. Also,
so he's a white man.
I really wanted to see the scene from the comic where basically they find him just cowering and crying in a bathtub.
Right.
Yeah.
That if you're going to give me this sort of washed down villain, then I need that ending for him.
Yeah. The movie villain was Pharma Bro.
He was.
Martin Shkreli.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And that's very timely.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, it would have been fine for him to be cowering somewhere and all five of them don't light his ass
Yeah,
up.
they gave him a little bit more oomph in the movie than I think he probably should have.
The little Mexican standoff with the guns, and then he still caught an axe to the chest, and then was still gonna shoot her.
Actually, it does make sense though, because he is a white American male, so he believes that come at me
as long as
I've seen a movie, I know how to do this.
Yeah, as long as I've got a gun, I'm the one in charge.
Exactly.
And until I grew up in that whole society.
Until there's no organic food in prison.
Right.
By the way, fuck you, QAnon. Fuck you, all of you. All of you. All of you so much. Yeah, man. But yeah, it's Merrick. I did like him more in the movie. I agree.
Did you?
Just because I like a good villain. I don't like a mustache twirling.
I like a Snidely Whiplash though. Like I like to know like this is the bad guy from the get-go.
Yeah. See, I like to know that Magneto was right in a lot of ways. Magneto.
But we can't. Every villain can't be Magneto. I'm sorry.
But every villain should believe in something. Like very few people. I'm not going to say nobody. Very few people believe in evil for
right. And there is a villain who is completely black villain is fucking boring.
Same as a hero that is very, very white.
Exactly.
White.
I think the movie
Superman?
Merrick was too entitled for me. That's what I didn't like. His entitlement just rubbed me the wrong way. And then of course,
I think it's supposed to. But
I know.
Right.
But then I was like, oh, you're so entitled. Why don't you fix your face? Like I just
yeah, you rat-faced little man.
I know. I just got immature about it. It's maybe my problem.
Dear Harry Melling, we know you have an actual face. And we're very, very sorry that Alysen has decided that somehow your face.
Your face.
Although I'm really curious now if I look through what he's known for. Oh my God, he was Dudley Dursley.
Yeah.
Oh,
he wasn't.
Yes,
yeah,
he was.
He
was Dudley Dursley. Yep.
Oh, maybe I just hate him subconsciously.
Uh-huh.
That's possible.
I mean, you already got to hate him through 7 other movies, so it's like, or 8 other movies, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like,
damn.
It's kind of ingrained in you at this point.
Yeah. He does seem kind of Dursley Snidely-ish.
Yeah.
Right.
Simpering.
Oh.
Entitled.
Well, but that kills me because
I just made a Alexis face. I just realized.
Alexis, because we've been watching too much shit.
Yeah, I just made the Alexis face. Here, let me get on camera so you can see me, because I was like,
Ew, David.
Ew.
But yeah, it's, you look at like Alan Rickman's a great example. When Alan Rickman was alive, like he was known for such a great villainous roles generally because he just had that look, right? So we identify villain with that look. I was thinking that about the actor that played Booker today. From the very beginning, for some reason, I don't like Booker, even the first time that I was watching it. And I think it's because they got an actor that has that, maybe he has played a villain.
Well, I think, you bring
He was
up
the villain in Red Sparrow.
Yeah, but I mean, okay. There's a difference between a character actor who plays villains, who has the look for a villain, and someone who can portray the depth of character and just emotion and what have you.
Which is definitely an Alan Rickman thing.
Exactly.
Yes.
By Grabthar's Hammer, he was a great actor.
That's true.
Yes.
I mean, he may have played a lot of villains, but the reason that he did it, and he did it so well, is even though he was a villain, he was still a person.
Yes.
There were things there that you saw, identified with, cared about, what have you. Merrick, fuck that shit.
Yeah. There's nothing likable about him.
No. I mean, he's a human that breathes air.
When he was a Dursley, you still saw him as a human, and you were like, still fuck that guy.
Yeah. The only likable thing about him is he's a carbon-based entity that exists in our plane of being.
Yeah, I guess
that's just oxygen he's using up that I could be using.
But see, I'm just trying to find the positives.
Well, and I think the Merrick in the comic we don't know enough about. Like we get a lot of his appearance, and we get his ruthlessness. He reminded me of Putin, actually. Right? He's very ruthless. He's very, he's clearly like considers himself to be good looking, and right. But we don't actually know much about him.
Right. The other thing one of the things that was problematic for me is the trope of the doctor that completely gives up all of their, the reason you become a doctor, like a medical doctor, is to help people.
Gave up on their Hippocratic oath.
But losing sight of that, it's okay to harm someone or whatever, as long as my goal is reached.
We can basically torture these organisms to death, or just continue torturing them because they won't die.
Right.
Let's all throw books at Myrtle because she can't feel it.
Right.
Wow.
Having just watched it today, I was thinking that because there is a scene where the doctor is talking to Nikki and Joe.
Yeah.
And Nikki says, I've seen people justify this throughout the centuries, or throughout history. And I just needed, I don't know. I'm back and forth on it. Did I need him to actually say Mengele, or was that enough to just insinuate Mengele and going back? That's the newest example, really.
And I think that by doing that, they've very efficiently and cleanly pointed you in whatever direction your mind would go to identify those monsters of history without having to call up names. It's like, let's not spoon feed the youngsters.
Well, and usually I very much agree with that. I got there. I'm just wondering if the point was really driven home for other people. And then I realized, well, I don't fucking care about other people. But
well, I do care about other people, but I also think that your labor and my labor are worth things. And
I still take the W.C. Fields approach. It's I love mankind as people I can't stand.
Yeah.
Well, and the doctor in the comic, helps him, right? The doctor in the comic kind of cuts him loose and says, "Okay." But
there was such a better scene in the comic with Nikki and Joe, though, because God damn.
Right, they're amazing together.
Yeah, well, but the doctor goes and has a change of heart and opens stuff up, and like Joe, she's like, oh, no, it's a he in the comic.
It's a he in the comic.
Just remember, tell her that I helped you, because it's not a change of heart. I'm on the losing side now.
I'm gonna save my skin.
And Nikki says, but you hurt him, and there is a version version of that in the movie.
Yeah.
Where it's just a soldier that shoots, shoots Nikki and then like is like, oh, okay, I give up. And Joe murders him. But in the comic, it was so much more because it's too little too late.
Yeah.
And it's just really showing the depth of those two characters and how their love for each other. Because it doesn't matter, right? It's if you're looking at a bullet, for something that might kill them, it's a 1 in a million shot. That is the one that they're not going to come back from. Yeah. Because they never know. And so basically it's like ultimately it was a useless gesture, but
it's part of the reason why with that couple I actually like that they set them in the Crusades. It would have been super easy to put them in the Greek army because we know that the Greek military would pair men up exactly for this reason. It's one thing to go to war and just the general says I gotta kill this guy. It's another thing to be like, I'm in love with that man and you hurt him, so now I'm not gonna fight. I hate to be sexist about it, I'm not gonna fight like a dude, I'm gonna fight like a woman does. And so it's less about can I win or not, and more I just want to hurt you.
Right.
Well, and I think that so on that level, absolutely that's going on. A little bit like a next level down is they both know that every time they get injured or die
could be the time.
No, that it moves them closer to that time.
Right.
They don't know how many times they can die before they just stop.
Good point.
Right.
And
is it a count or is it time?
Right.
And
so, yes, it's you have hurt the one I love, and so I'm going to murder face you. But it's also like you have taken away time. Potentially, I don't understand how this works, but you've potentially taken away from the time I have with the person I love.
Yes.
And
this is for that you must die.
Right. And given that this relationship is really all they have in this life.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do want to jump back one more to Copley just on one thing. Because I do like his character development and in the movie. Also in the comic, I do like his stuff. But the one thing that I was missing out with the movie version is since he makes the decision to just GTFO and he knows he's going to be on the losing side, and he knows it from a line that Nikki gives him, which I loved, which he looks at him and he says, what happens when your employee's frustration inevitably outmatches his greed? And like that line resonated with me. I'm like, that is a great line to look at somebody who is a pseudo villain, but not the villain, and be like, your time is limited.
Yeah.
So make the best, even if,
it's something that, for anybody to think of that, in this land of capitalism too, it's just like what happens when, their desire to get a paycheck from you is suddenly outmatched by their frustration with the company.
Right. And it's basically you're working for a villain.
Yeah.
How long until the Joker asks Bob for his gun?
Right.
It's just Bob's gun.
Right, exactly. And what, when you talk about soldiers in the military, overall, their alliance to their country is what keeps them in line, and the structure that the military builds to keep them in line. Mm-hmm. But when you are a minion working for a villain, what is that structure? Have you done something to their brains?
Right.
Like how are you so sure of their
how are you maintaining
commitment?
Loyalty?
Yeah.
How are you maintaining commitment?
So
no nuts.
We didn't give him nuts or chips or anything. He's choking on his own tongue over here.
So Achilles, this is a really minor thing, but I like it when movies don't have a love interest for the main character because it seems like a cop out and everything.
Yes.
We already have Nikki and Joe, and like they are very much we are the unbreakable love in this movie. But in the comic, Andy has Achilles. Even through flashbacks, she has experienced love. She's had this whole great love story. None of that, not even an attempt at it in the movie.
They hinted at a couple of things here and there. There was one direct reference right away in the beginning of the movie when they're all meeting at the hotel about what you see in the first couple pages, how Andy basically just takes a different lover every night.
Oh yeah, no, it's fucking drop you. That's not a love interest.
They make a couple like subtle references to that in the very beginning of the film too.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, they really don't really do anything with it.
Well, and the comic has another line that I fucking loved, which is, "I'm gonna find a shower and someone to share it with."
Yeah.
Well, and that begs a question. Are we seeing in this small group of people kind of the character archetypes? Where you have the lovers, you have people who cannot exist without love. You have the leaders, the people who find their meaning in leading others to whatever. It just came to mind. So I'm just curious, because if all of them felt this need for love and whatever, you would see a much more tragic trail.
And I think we do see the tragedy of that, because putting it that way, since you just brought it up, makes Booker's decision make more sense.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because Booker does not, and he points out a part of that. He points out Nikki and Joe have each other.
Right.
They have each other through eternity.
Right.
Eventually they'll have to deal with that, but right now they're content.
Right.
He tries to bring Andy in with his, and to some extent she's the bridge that might understand how far he's gone. But you're right. She has leadership. She has this family.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, Booker's desire to die outweighed his family.
Right.
And that was not what...
I think they just have different coping skills. So the boys have each other. We know that, right? And Andy, I think in the comic, the reason why she has this sort of promiscuous streak, I think it's 100% the sort of the mentality of fuck your pain away.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
In the movie, it's more drink your pain away.
Right.
And in the movie, that's what Booker has. Absolutely. So left with these three like options, I can be in love. I can basically just screw them and leave them so that I'm not wholly empty every moment. Or I can fill that hole and that void with alcohol. Yeah, man. Like two of these four things don't feel great.
Well, but I think Niall brings in another option.
Yes.
Family.
Right.
You don't have to have romantic love in your life.
Yes.
If you have love in your life, if you have someone that you care about in your life, it might suck to not have romantic love in your life, but you have someone that understands you,
something
that knows
that's at least
you.
rewarding on a level like that.
But you also have another being that knows you, who knows who you are and loves you anyway.
But
I also think that we can't give, I'm sorry, Josh, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. No.
I also think we can't give Andy a love interest, because the fact of the matter is the way that movies portray women with a love interest is there doesn't seem to be a good, clean way to do that without giving them weakness.
Right.
Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I thought that from the movie, I was under the impression that they were trying to point Quinn out as Andy's love interest in the movie. Of course, she didn't really exist she did, but in the book,
which is great. I mean, I don't mind it. It especially brings the idea of, after a certain amount of time, bodies are just bodies. It's just people are people. People are just people. Bodies are just bodies.
Yeah. I think there's some very bisexual overtones to Andy, specifically when she goes into the pharmacy and the woman in the pharmacy.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. And all the camera angles are all on your fingers and stuff. Like, you don't recognize that your fingers are a sexual object until you date another woman. Right? Like, it's
right. But I guess my point is, I would really love for us to be able to say these things without it having to do with sex. And I guess that's not possible. Right. And I'm just old.
No, I mean, we're getting there. Like,
I mean, it doesn't, what does it have to do with sex? I mean, people can genuinely love another person.
We're just getting to a point where transgender can be something that isn't, that's the problem with being progressive, is that we're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Well, and media and movies are always going to be a good chunk behind. Even if you look at 1950s, 1960s television.
True.
I mean, you don't really think that 1950s couples were sleeping in twins' beds, right? Like,
right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, WandaVision is really showing us that, but we're holding that for next season.
Well, they're not showing it to us now. I mean, none of us would fucking be here if our parents slept in twin beds.
Right.
Well, you bend one over. Anyway.
Missing the point. You know what? There was a jet that went over your head like 50,000 feet.
I'm just saying they don't have to share the same bed to make you.
Yeah. Okay.
As a
Carry
nurse,
on.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Alexis has been on many sinks.
That's not my point.
I know.
Carry on.
I know. So I have a couple last points, but one of them is Niles' story, movie compared to book.
Yeah.
And I do want to say I did like her story a lot more in the movie. I think that she had more agency. I think she had more decisions. In the movie, she decides I can have a few years left with my family. I'm going to go and do that. And that's when she finds out, Booker turned on Andy and Andy's in trouble and makes the choice to go back. And again, can leave after that, but through that has kind of learned, okay, yep, this is, has Copley make her MIA and, walk away from her family. I find that a much better decision than kind of in the comic where she doesn't have that struggle that you can really see past Booker's conversation with her. And Booker's speech is in both.
Yes.
I found that Booker's speech hit harder in the comic than it did in the movie. And yet even then, Niles still makes the choice that she's going to go back to her family for a few years and then, meet up later.
Yeah.
But going through this, it gives her a lot more agency, and I really enjoyed that.
Well, I think she's a main character in the movie, and she's a supporting character in the book.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. I also think there's a theme that runs through the story itself. That is, if you have something special like this, you don't want to tell regular people about it because they have no way of comprehending it and they will simply kill you to get it.
Well, and I love Booker's speech both times for that.
Yeah.
Because he's like, you have these great memories of your family and they are going to beg you for it as they get older and you cannot, you don't know how, you can't give it to them. Mm-hmm. And so the only thing you have left at the end of everything is your memories, and those will be corrupted by the end. And it is such a great, again, you talk about how Immortals like stories don't tackle a lot of these things. That is a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's just the fear that people have of death. All you're going to remember is their fear and what they said and did when they were afraid.
Through that fear. Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is not when humans are at their best.
No.
Right. Okay. So my last point before our stereotypical last question is that Charlize Theron is in her mid-40s. Keanu Reeves also in his mid-40s, late 40s.
What are you pushing for Keanu Reeves to come in on the next
my
movie?
precious babies.
Yeah, babies.
My babies.
Charlize Theron, I think her first action movie was 15 years ago, was Aeon Flux, really. But she's really had a resurgence with Mad Max from 2015.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at 6 years. Like, she was already in her late 30s. Are our new action stars, because we're not getting many of them, they tend to be older.
I have an explanation
we've
for
got
this.
Liam Neeson.
No,
who is also very old.
Right?
I have an explanation.
Okay.
Baby boomers.
Okay.
That's the vast part of our population in the United States. While Charlize Theron and Keanu Reeves are relatively young in their minds, they are still known and, known quantities to baby boomers. Also not like a 25-year-old that looks like they're 12.
That's fair.
So they're a little bit more relatable. I think within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to start to shift younger again as far as action stars go. When, as that generation starts to go away and we move into the, the next few generations into the older spheres.
Old ass Gen Xers start becoming the 50 and 60 year olds.
But I mean, because I went back and I started to look at a lot of what the last 20 years worth of action movies. And you know what? There actually aren't that many of them. There are a few that really changed the genre.
I know.
You look at like John Wick.
Yeah.
And you look at, I mean, okay, and you're gonna poo-poo, but the Expendables, the 3 Expendables movies.
Why am I gonna poo-poo it? I
Right.
love the Expendables.
But that was all the guys coming out of retirement. These are the guys from the 80s, and now they're in the 2000s.
Yeah.
You
but
know,
they still told better storylines. Like one of my favorite movies from the 80s was Schwarzenegger's Commando.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the storyline on that was garbage.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can take all these same actors now, throw them into the Expendables.
Yep.
And we've got better writers, and suddenly the same movie with a lot of the same actors becomes 10 times better movie.
You look at the first Expendables movie, and the 2 people that were the heart of the movie were Mickey Rourke and Dolph Lundgren, right?
Yes.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Well, you know what else has shifted now that you mentioned that too is when we were talking about action stars, they're not selling us on their physicality anymore.
Right.
I mean,
Also true.
yes, okay, John Wick, sure. I mean, it's not like he's, really badly out of shape, but he's also not a Schwarzenegger.
Right.
He's not Conan the Barbarian.
Exactly. And that's another movement that I absolutely love, is that you're moving to people who look more realistically like the person you might pass on the street.
Right.
Because a portion of their ability to function in that action star role is their intellect, which I think came, not to get totally off track, but I think that came over with Die Hard.
No, I agree. I completely agree.
I would argue
And
a
I
little
don't
bit
think
with
that's off
James
track at
Bond,
all.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, James Bond, I think, is a little more training and tools, and some improvisational ability,
Right.
Might
but
not necessarily be intelligence as much as charisma.
Also true.
and training.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
And that's a different genre.
Yeah. I recently read something about talent versus skill, and James Bond is definitely skill.
Yes.
It was taught. He was taught to be James Bond.
Right.
John Wick, that's a talent.
Right.
He may have learned things along the way, but that's who he was.
He also developed skills,
Yes.
but most of this is coming from sheer raw talent.
And it's not to say that James Bond couldn't be John Wick, because once you're trained and you know those things, you can develop that talent.
Yeah.
So I think we can all say that we really did like the old guard.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my question. I'll start with Alysen. Will you read the second comic, or will you wait for the next movie?
I've already bought the second comic. Yeah, primarily because after I saw the movie and then kind of reread it, I was like, I wonder if Quinn is in the second one. And I haven't actually even cracked it yet, but I did pick it up, and I can't sit around and wait for Netflix to get there. Just see where the mop flops. Come on.
We're still in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Give me my instant gratification where I can get it.
Yes. Yeah.
I got
absolutely.
my Werewolf the Apocalypse video game dropping on Thursday, so I'm good to go.
Absolutely.
Jen?
You haven't bought this?
I have not bought it yet. I'm waiting for your answer on this.
Yeah, I absolutely will read it and watch it. And I will probably read it before I watch it because it's not out yet.
Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
In the immortal words of Carrie Fisher, instant gratification sometimes just takes too long.
Amen, sister.
Bear?
I will definitely watch. I will definitely read, and I will actually probably wait to read until I have watched.
So you've watched?
Hey.
That's kind of my shtick, anyways. I don't know if there's people that still need a refresher on that, but I'm the guy that's like,
you were
watch the movie / TV series first, read, go back and read later, because I've had so many people, and since we've been on a bit of a Harry Potter kick today, that actually was your brother that kind of started that with me, because going in to see Harry Potter and having Phil sit there going, skip 40 pages.
Yep.
Watch a couple more scenes, skip 50 pages.
Why did you not belt him in the fucking face?
He's already had his nose broken like 3 times.
Oh my God. Okay. I understand that. And I understand the people like your brother who cannot, say these are 2 different media. They're going to be treated in different ways. I can't expect them to be identical.
But there are some people that just don't.
Yeah.
That's not even a thought process that happens. And,
Right.
and actually, most of this, like after that happened, most of it started with Dune, because when the sci-fi miniseries of Dune came out, I got super interested interested in Dune. And then I went back and watched the 1984 movie, and then I went back and I started reading the books, and I was just like, I'm still going back and reading the books, and I'm still going back and watching the movies and the miniseries, even though, and doing it in that order, I think is the reason why that I still do it. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
that's
it's like
fair.
I haven't completely shunned one over the other because, oh my God, the book was so much better. This movie's terrible. You know, why am I still doing this? No, I go back and still watch and listen to all of these.
I have done a little bit of both. I'm less likely to go read a book that a movie is based on because I don't see the point. If the book wasn't intriguing to me before I saw the
seasons of this podcast at this.
I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, this is right.
I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna watch it, and I'm gonna do whatever I want. So there.
Although I will say, I think it has to do with level of investment.
Yes.
Because yesterday I told you that the likely death for Sandman will be Kat Dennings, who did
don't at me. I'm not a fan.
Right. But yes, and you had a very visceral reaction. But that's, again,
she fucked up Sandman on the audiobook for me. She fucked it up. Death doesn't sound like a cute little kid. I mean, I get it. She's a teenager, but she's got a little bit more.
I think, again, that my brother had that intense feeling for the Harry Potter books, and you have that intense feeling for the Sandman books.
I thank you for explaining that to me, Josh. I appreciate it. I didn't see it the way that you're explaining it to me until now.
I'm gonna go over here. Try not to get any blood. Well, no, this stuff can have blood on it. It's fine.
I think print media and film media, I think all it does is it gathers us different audiences sometimes. And I think that's okay, because then overall that particular fandom has a broader base. And when we have a broader base, sometimes it gets watered down a la Dune. But other times,
because that's a broader base. The whole, like, one movie, one miniseries, and a few books.
I'm telling you, that's a hard one. But
that's super watered down compared to how many movies are there for Star Wars?
She's talking about fan base.
Absolutely. I think that it's okay to gather more people into the fandom. That's how you get more of this stuff printed and expressed. And the reason we all liked the original Dune movie when we did is because there was nothing else, right? So
yes, exactly. So when Lynch's Dune came out, I was like, you don't understand, I was so excited to see that.
You're just a David Lynch fan in general, on top of everything.
Yes. So it was like two things in one that I enjoy.
You got your chocolate and my peanut butter.
Right.
But and so for me, visually, whether or not it reconciled with the book, visually, that was, it became...
Because you finally got a visual representation of all these things that have been just in your head.
Yes.
See, I'm fine if an ornithopter shows up. I'm like, that's that thing. That's that thing. I like it. But
it goes slappy,
Well, that's Patton Oswalt has a great bit about that, but he's like, I just want the thing that I like, and I don't want the thing that I don't like. And that's the problem, is things evolve. So, if people have a problem with a female being the lead in a Star Wars movie, sorry, die mad about it.
And I am being Patton Oswalt about a casting choice.
Right, and that's fine. But that's what I'm saying is on one side we have to recognize that we have those, and we have to allow for other people to have those.
Right.
I personally am on board. I'm a huge Gambit fan, and I'm fine with whoever. Like, as long as it isn't as because they didn't even screw him up in Wolverine Origins. They screwed everybody else up. Way worse. Way worse, right?
Yep.
But Channing Tatum for years has been talked about, and I just watch day in, day out people being like, you can't have Channing Tatum as Gambit. I'm like, really? Because I can name you 4 different movies he's in that I have seen him in, and I was not a big fan of him to begin with. But through seeing his progression, I can tell you how that character would work. And it really comes down to, are people willing to make it good? Look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Nobody thought Guardians of the Galaxy was going to work.
Right.
There's a fucking raccoon with a gun. There's a tree.
Yeah,
One of your characters
that only says 3 words.
Right.
Well, I still think Marvel did half their movies on a dare. Like they were just they're so good at making comic book movies. We just want to make DC look ridiculous. So here's Guardians of the Galaxy. Everybody loves it. Oh, and side note, we can sell t-shirts of Howard the Duck again.
Right.
Fuck on that, DC.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Oh my God. I'm going to get you a t-shirt, Josh, that says suck on that DC.
Oh,
Can it have Howard the Duck's face on it?
Yes.
That's gonna be our new logo for the podcast.
No, we can't do that. We can't do that.
That's too far,
Yeah.
especially with the announcement we have at the end of this episode.
It's a bridge too far, especially considering, the label that Sandman was under.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, we all know that Vertigo isn't really DC.
Fact.
Yeah, follow the money. Follow the money.
Oh.
Alysen, thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you guys. This is always a lot of fun.
This has been fantastic, and I'm glad that you're here when we make this big announcement.
Announcement
On our penultimate season 4 episode. So
another bonus episode, kids.
There will be another bonus episode, and something that people have been kind of asking about for a while. So we're going to take one of the big milestones and we're going to make it however many episodes it ends up being.
However many bonus episodes it needs to be.
But we are going to have a large panel of DC people, and we are going to tackle the goddamn Batman. So we have already shown Bear, who had not seen them before, the 10 best episodes of the animated series.
Oh, and by the way, no, we'll discuss this in the episode.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go 60s Adam West. We're gonna go Burton. We're gonna go
I almost bought the Burton
Schumacher
package, the Burton Schumacher package on Voodoo today, but I just dropped $1,400 on a new bed. So I'm like,
I might be the one to buy it today because we're gonna watch them. And can't remember the name of the director, but the Batman Begins.
Snyder.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, Nolan. You mean Nolan? Sorry.
And then we will have to still watch Superman v Batman again. Batman v Superman.
Do we have to?
Yeah. But that will be our big mid-season break that we will release, where we will tackle the Batman. And each of us are also responsible for going out into the universe,
digging up our own. You're gonna make me go find my own,
find your own Batman,
like graphic novel to talk about.
Yep.
But I have to say, also an exciting announcement. An exciting announcement. As these things are being put into the universe, I will be finishing grad school.
Hey!
Woo-hoo! So Jenn will be taking over the entirety of the show.
I will not only be taking over the entirety of the show, I will be taking over
the company.
So Jenn, when are we going to mask up and go look for anything Batman that we can try and care about?
I don't know. I can drive tomorrow.
But hey, join us next week when we will have our season finale of season 4, The Addams Family, where my brother, my Fester, will be here. Phil Wasta will be here for our finale. So, are you doing the thing?
No.
Okay, you were just putting your hand down on the table. And until then, take it away, Vandello.
Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same. Do 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 do. Come at me, and I'll show you something you ain't never seen before. right or wrong? Or can't we all just get along? My mask is no different than yours. Pretty pictures on the screen, but nothing's ever as it seems.